Hi guys, and welcome back to In the Hot Seat with Emily Diala and Dr. Viviana Coles. I'm Emily and this is Dr. Coles, and we are excited that you're joining us back today. So if you're just joining, you are tuning in to the second episode in the second series that we've done. Definitely go back to earlier in our YouTube page so you can see what you've missed. In this series, we're talking about different relationship dynamics that can be a problem in and of themselves, but can certainly influence people's sex lives as well. So in the last episode, we talked about power and control, and today we are going to talk about love and chemistry.
LOVE. It's such a big word.
It's also a four-letter word.
Yes, it is. Throwing it around a lot.
Yeah.
So today, talking about love, there is a somewhat new phenomenon. We don't think about it that way, but it's somewhat new to consider love a factor when choosing a partner.
Right. Getting married for love essentially is only recently happening in history. Like if history is on a timeline like this, marrying for love is happening about here.
And focusing in on that in the U.S. is something that's even newer.
Right.
So when we talk about love, and we're going to talk about it a lot today, this idea that it's a feeling that drives you towards someone else is problematic.
Yep. I love the way that Scott Peck talks about it in his book, The Road Less Traveled. He talks about there are two fundamental flaws with this idea of falling in love. One is that it's sex driven, so usually you fall in love with someone who you want to have sex with.
You got that sexual chemistry with
Exactly. And the other is that it's temporary. So the feeling of falling in love inevitably comes to an end, and then love becomes a verb, and that's when couples tend to run into problems.
We hear about love is work, and staying in love is work,
Yeah.
and falling out of love is not as hard to do, and it happens really often. And we're often seeing couples and individuals who are in the aftermath of what has happened when they're in the wake of love.
Right.
But love and this feeling that draws you to this other person that typically will include a sexual drive towards someone else. Not always, though. And especially not at the same rate that maybe they're feeling those feelings towards you.
Right.
So we're often seeing clients who are struggling with these feelings of love and wanting to express them sexually.
So how would you differentiate? I think there are overlaps, but there are certainly differences between love and chemistry. How would you define the two of those?
So when it comes to love, first of all, there's all different ways of showing love and feeling love. And we won't go into all of those today. But when it comes to romantic love, I really think that the difference between that and chemistry is that your whole being feels like it's working towards connection with that other person. Your physical being, your emotional being, your intellectual being. And when you have chemistry, it really enhances that and encourages it.
Yeah.
Whereas love can be a platform to build that. I think that chemistry is a real thrust towards that.
Right.
What about for you?
I think that a lot of people confuse intensity with intimacy, and I think intensity is more clearly felt when we're in that high chemistry phase. It's like, I cannot wait to get you home and rip off all your clothes. You know, that's that intensity, chemistry. I like to ask couples how they feel when they kiss their partner. Do they feel like, everything else fades away? Yeah, that's chemistry. And a lot of people will end a relationship when that feeling starts to fade away, or if it goes away. Whereas true intimacy is usually felt when you're in love with another person and when you're working to maintain love. It's like, I love you and I'm going to try to like you even when you're not at your best self.
Right, and that tends to be the more long-term way of keeping a couple together is building intimacy, building this idea that we are looking past today, tomorrow, and trying to focus on melding our lives together and mixing who we are sexually together to be able to go ahead and fit together long term.
But not losing yourself in the process. I think that's also where a lot of couples will end a relationship, is if they feel like suddenly they're compromising themselves too much, or they have this misconception that compromise means I'm going to lose who I am, and that can be a libido killer, and that kind of gets into codependent territory, which we'll talk about in a later episode. But you don't want to lose who you can still have a sense of self and a strong emotional connection to another person.
And that unity that you're trying to create.
Like, we're in this together.
We're in this together. We're a team. I use the team metaphor a lot. And we're on this team together, but we're still individual players.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have trouble negotiating what those roles are.
Exactly.
And sometimes they think that it's because it's out of love, and it might be just power and control hidden. It could just be sex urges and desire. There's a lot of different things that play into that.
Right. I think chemistry, love is definitely a verb, and we talked about that. I think chemistry is harder to create. You know, I like to, when couples come in and they feel like the passion is lost, I like to ask them how they felt in the beginning of their relationship, because that's usually an indicator that they had chemistry there at one time.
And
we can work if they didn't,
it's so hard
it's
to
not
create.
something that can really be created.
Now, but there are couples, you know, we're talking about different cultures.
Yeah.
There are couples that come into relationships without any chemistry.
Maybe they had like an arranged marriage or something,
And
they
without
were kind of
love
put
being
together.
a factor,
Right.
and they were put together. And you know what? They tend to do pretty well.
They do. It's
And
really
a lot of that
interesting.
has to do with their expectations.
Yes.
No one's really being disappointed because they didn't have all these expectations on chemistry, on love, that maybe people from the US tend to do.
I think it's important when you get into a new relationship, if you're considering marriage or, you know, long-term monogamy, to talk about what your expectations are. Be open with your partner about what that means, so that you're both on the same page, and so that when the relationship seems to fall, or if you feel like you're falling out of love, that you can remind your partner that we went into this with similar expectations, and let me help you pull the relationship back up.
That's a great segue into our next challenge. It's a hashtag hot seat, and today we're going to ask you, I knew I had fallen in love when, ...
That's a fun one.
I'd love to hear from both men and women. We want to hear your experiences, and maybe in the future episodes we'll go ahead and talk about it and share those experiences.
Have you ever had that feeling where you feel like you've fallen in love, and then something happens and you fall deeper in love?
Oh gosh, that like, okay, it's not getting any better, and then it does?
And then it does.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully we'll get to hear from y'all, and we'll see you next time.